Hey, how's it going? Today I'm chatting to Ribsy, who is a photographer, YouTube producer, and host of the new classic film photography podcast. And he recently also released a film under the same name. So, what is it you
Yeah.
don't do, man?
I don't know, man. I do a whole lot of stuff nowadays. It's kind of crazy, honestly, how life
Yeah,
has progressed. I've always dabbled a lot in different things, but I guess we have time now. I guess that's the difference. More time now than I've ever really had in the past. So I've doubled down on a few things.
I see. And you work a full time job or at least part time, right?
Yeah. No, I have a full time 9 to 5. I work in the advertising technology business. So, have you ever heard of like Google and Facebook, like those
Hmm.
kind of companies? I'm in the exact same business when it comes to advertising. Just not I don't work for those companies though.
Yeah, I don't know how you managed to do it, man, because it's like you're a bit of an entrepreneur in ways. You're juggling all this sort of stuff and you manage to kind of really keep busy and
Yeah.
hustle and keep coming up with some new content for the channel, for example, which I'm always
Hmm.
enjoying. And the last time we spoke was on a video for your channel talking
Hmm.
about Kodak Ektar 100
Yeah. Yeah.
and some of the difficulties and tricks with scanning, all that sort of nonsense that us camera geeks get into.
It's funny. I've learned a lot since then, and it like at that time, I guess I didn't really understand the idea that like different film stocks like would just perform differently when you print versus when you scan, and it's not that one is right or wrong. I went hard on Nectar. I remember being so passionate about like I don't like this film, and then I
Yeah.
did a 180, and then since then I've been like, wow, that was dumb. But it's on the internet forever now, so whatever.
Yeah, yeah. Your video was like apologies to Ektar or something like that. It was I'm sorry.
Exactly.
There's a lot of love and hate for that film.
I know.
But yeah, since doing that chat, I think that was late last year. You've been putting out heaps of great stuff. You've launched the podcast, I think, after we last spoke, and
Hmm.
especially of note recently was you've joined the ranks of Kodak and Fujifilm and Lomography, and Ribsy is up there now. So you've launched your own film. It's called the new classic is the brand, but it's
Hmm.
called Easy 400. So
Correct.
tell me and anyone listening a little bit more about this film, why you launched it, and sort
Yeah.
of how you went about it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, first and foremost, I've had an extreme joy like being part of this film photography community, whether it's YouTube or whether it's like in real life, because I've been part of both, and I guess over time I started to realize that I myself was kind of I was gonna say owner, and that's such a like bad word for what I want to communicate, but like I was kind of the anchor, let's say, of my own little community, and I was like, well, this is pretty cool, and like the internet puts ideas in your head, you're like, oh, you should sell something, you should do this, you should do that, but I just didn't, I had zero interest in going the typical route in terms of like, oh, let's make a T-shirt or a hat or some sort of merch. I was like, what can I do that's a bit more substantial than that and potentially more meaningful and potentially like has a longer runway like over time, and creating a film stock I thought would be a fantastic project with regards to kind of that thinking. But then came the question like, what do I want to do in creating a film stock? Like, do I want to just have a brand? Do I want to change anything? Do I want to innovate in any way? And of course, I have zero resources here from a manufacturing and that kind of perspective. So, we start small and then build from there. But I realized that the quickest thing I could do was actually try to eliminate some plastic waste from the film photography process. Film photography has a lot of different environmental concerns associated with it. And I'm by no means like the green champion of film photography. Like there's so many different things that can be changed and a lot of great people doing a lot of great different things individually. So for me, I decided that the first thing I could do would be to cut out some of that plastic by eliminating that plastic container that usually comes with 35 millimeter film. And a lot of people ask, like, is that okay? Is that good? Why they do that? Um, I will say I'm not a scientist. I don't have like hard scientific evidence, but um, I'm not the first to use this, recycled cardboard container, and those that have used it in the past have a pretty good like track record already ahead of them. So, based off of that, I got the confidence that I could do this too. And then my personal experiences, when it comes to my own stuff, I am not like one of those people you see on the internet that's like has a fridge dedicated to film. Everything is stored perfectly neatly, like takes care, does everything by the book. That's cool for them. I am just not like that as a human being. In fact, like under me right now, if I look down under this table, there's just film on the floor, and it's been sitting there for 2 months,
Mm.
and we're in a heat wave right now. and you best believe I'm going to shoot that film, and you best believe I'm going to get some dope pictures with it. So, long story short, in my experience, film is quite resilient, and the emulsion is resilient. The plastic itself is, I mean, it's plastic. Plastic will never. Plastic is like the most resilient thing on earth. I think in the short term, also with a little bit of care, you can really take care of film and make it last. So, long story short, I decided that was going to be the first thing I was going to do to try to change things up and innovate and kind of do something different. And then now that this has been kind of proven to be a success, I mean, I think it's a success. I don't know about anybody else, but I have the confidence now and the excitement now to say, all right, so that was step one. What are we going to do next time? How are we going to change things even further? How are we going to innovate? How are we going to, kind of throw a wrench in the system that is, the film photography world? I got a lot of ideas. The question is, who can I pay to help me execute? So yeah, that was kind of the motivation behind it. And just real quick, the stock itself is black and white, is a 400 speed film, and it's a very kind of classic, beautiful looking film, in my opinion. There's very clear film grain present there, but it's got this nice little like smooth yet like obvious kind of thing going on. And the look is just very, it punches you in the face. It's not like one of these kind of soft, clean cut black and white films. This one delivers something right out of the box, and whether you like it or not, if you use this film, it's going to give you a look. If you want to control everything on your own, then this might not be the one for you.
Fair enough. Yeah. And anyone who wants to see more, I know that you did a video about a little bit more of the backstory of how you actually went about making the film, and you had plenty of like sample photos and stuff there. So I'd recommend anyone watching to check out Ribsy's channel and the video on that. There's some really cool sample photos that I saw there. It looks like a great film for shooting street, being a black and white 400 speed with plenty of character. I think that's especially what I look for when I'm shooting street. And what you're talking about in terms of trying to make a difference in terms of that environmental impact of film, like we can't deny that the majority of the impact film has is probably more from the chemistry and all this other stuff.
Yeah.
But at least you're making a difference, even if it's a small difference. You're at least trying to make difference and kind of initiate change, because you might do this, other brands might look at that and do the same and say, hey, do we really need to use these little plastic containers? How about going down the cardboard route? And then there might be something else down the track, and at least it's sort of creating a better sense of awareness as well. And I know a lot of people will probably want to ask and get into the nitty gritty of like, what film did you use or all that. I'm not really interested in knowing that, to be honest. To me, it's not really important. But I know a lot of people watching might be curious about that. But I think what is great is that you're creating a new brand and putting film out to more people, whether it's young or old or new shooters or whatever. It's all about marketing, and I think you're doing that really well. So I'm looking forward to maybe trying this film out on the street sometime.
Yeah, no, I'll definitely get some out your way. It's funny. I basically was kind of predicting where things would sell based off of my YouTube data, like who's watching my videos and where. Yeah. And it honestly kind of worked out exactly like that. Australia, for me, is one of my top countries for views.
Really?
Yeah, it's top 5. I think it might be number 3 or number 4.
Okay.
Yes. You've got US is number 1, UK is number 2. And they're pretty close, although the US is definitely a little bit bigger. And then after that, it drops off. But then there's a couple key kind of second tier. And you've got Canada, you've got Australia, and then I think you've got like Germany, Netherlands, that kind of thing. So yeah, I was curious how many people from Australia would show love, and I've sent a whole bunch of packages to Australia in the last couple of days.
Oh, great!
It's been very nice to see that. I've never been to Australia. Outside of like I grew up in New York City, but like uptown, like in a very immigrant-based community, specific country, and Australia just was irrelevant my entire life. I knew Australia, I think, because of the Olympics once. A while ago or something, but
Sydney. Yeah.
It's just weird to come to where I am now and like be like, oh, I'm sending something that I'm touching is going to be in someone's hands in Australia in 4 or 5 days. Yeah. And I've interacted with them via this, so it's just weird, man. The internet is it's an incredible thing. We're living in a weird but amazing kind of time of history.
Tell me about it. Yeah. And anyone who doesn't know, Ribsy is originally from the United States, but he's relocated to England at the moment. You're in London, is that correct?
Correct. Yeah. I'm in Brixton. South London. Right.
And with the brand, with New Classics, do you have any plans further down the track? So you've launched Easy 400 as one potential product. Are there plans to do some more moving forward?
Oh, 100%, man. I tried to communicate this. I don't know if it was clear in the video and just in things I put out, but this is the start of a just a brand. This is as legit of a brand as any other brand you can think of. So this is not kind of a one and done deal. This is not just like a quick money grab. The plan is to reinvest all money right back into the project and really push this and see where we can take this. Um, Black and white film is the film that's made most readily, I would say. And what I mean by that is like there's more companies making black and white film as compared to color. So black and white was definitely the obvious kind of starting point. But that's only 35 millimeters so far. We've got 120, potentially in the works. There's other kinds of black and white film that I'd love to play with as well. This Easy 400 is it's a very specific look, as I mentioned, but I think there's also space for the opposite, something a bit cleaner and like more neutral, that kind of thing. So, we'll see when that pops up. And then color's the holy grail. Like color is not readily made. There's very few like individual companies doing it. Obviously, you've got Kodak and Fuji. They're massive, so they're making a lot of it, but those are just two entities. Outside of them, there's a couple pockets here and there doing some things, but I mean, even my efforts thus far in the last couple of months, it hasn't been the easiest thing to navigate. So, now that we've started and now that we're official and there's some buzz and money flowing through, I think it kind of changes the stakes a bit, and I'm feeling more motivated than ever to really push this. So yeah, there's definitely a lot more in the works, and that's just product wise. I don't want to lose sight of what got me here, which is the actual community engagement and the content and the experience. So obviously the podcast is not going anywhere. Season 2, we start recording next week. Or, sorry, what am I saying? Not next week, tonight. I say next week because last week I was talking about this to people about next week, but literally tonight. Today's a very busy day for me, but tonight I will be recording with my first guest, which is a great photographer who's based in Minneapolis in the U.S. I won't give out more secrets than that, but the episode will be out a little bit later this week. So yeah, the podcast is going to be kind of one of my tenet points in terms of engagement here, and then from there I want to really get creative. Obviously you'll see stuff in YouTube kind of filter in. Ribsy is still Ribsy, it's kind of everything, not New Classic only, but obviously New Classic is going to be part of it. And then I want to do some actual face-to-face engagement. Let's hope that the Rona kind of eventually settles and we can get over that hump, but I want to meet people. I want to engage and just hang out and even eat with people. I think every time I post food on Instagram, everybody's like salivating, going nuts. So there's all kinds of cool stuff we can do. But yeah, there's a lot of plans that I have. It's just a matter of time. We'll see.
Yeah, one day at a time, man. It's all going to happen.
I know.
Now, that's actually another thing I want to talk to you about is you launched this brand, the New Classic, initially with the podcast, which I remember signing up to, I think, on Spotify way back when you only had like the first couple of episodes. And I've really loved some of what I have listened to. I haven't listened to a lot of it, but I enjoyed especially like Chris Garner over in Japan, because I'd only just discovered his channel, and you had a great chat with him, and Danielle from Too Many Cameras on Instagram, Girl with Too Many Cameras, and Brooke Schultz, who I was a big fan of through wedding photography. And you've just reached out to some really interesting people, including them and, Karen Mayoka and Sophia Carey from over there where you are. And I've sort of noticed through this podcast that the people you interview, obviously a lot of creatives and like-minded people in photography and otherwise, but you've especially got a lot of people of color and women on the podcast, people that I don't normally see repeatedly pop up on a lot of other podcasts and things like that. Now, obviously, was there some intentionality when it came to that? And what was your approach to starting this podcast and who you chose to interview?
Yeah, no, I love that you asked this question because I think this is fundamental. So no question about it. This was all 100% intentional. My aim in creating the podcast was based off of one of the problems that I was seeing being talked about left and right. And it was the problem of representation. It's very clear that in analog photography and photography in general, in so many different things that we love and kind of engage with, typically white men are the only ones that are getting representation by the media outlets, by the brands, by whoever. And if they're not the only ones, if they're the majority share of it, I was like, well, it's clear to me that there's so many people that are not part of that demographic that are also doing cool stuff. So I'm going to create a podcast. At the time, I think I had like, I don't know, 5,000 YouTube subscribers. And I was like, I'm going to market that podcast to them. And, now I have a platform. Now I'm in charge. So with that platform, I can do whatever I want, reach out to whoever I want. And, when you say diversity and inclusiveness matters, there's a couple ways of going about it. And I think, it's so much easier than people think it is. In my experience working in corporate America, and also just hearing about other examples across corporate America and even in the UK, everywhere, corporations in general, everyone talks about diversity and inclusiveness, and they say that they're trying. Then they say it's hard and all of this. I just don't think any actions are typically direct enough. When you want to do it, you go and do it. And like, a lot might say I'm oversimplifying the whole thing, but I don't really think I am. I've also myself have worked on a lot of these internal committees on corporate teams and stuff like that. And I have experience in this kind of world separate from my podcast and kind of my own little media thing. So I've just noticed it's a problem. People say they want to do it and then they fail at doing it because they actually don't try. And the internet is the reason why there's no excuse, because the internet has basically shrunk the world down, and anybody who you want to talk to is potentially disposable, especially if you are a recognized brand with power, with access. I'm not a recognized brand with power and access, but I could still reach out and tailor my approach to different people based on, the access that I had. So ultimately, yeah, everything about this is 100% intentional. I will admit I hesitate in like talking about the fact that this is intentional. I'd rather just show it. And I don't think there's anything wrong with talking about it. But, as a person of color myself, like I've been talking about this shit for forever, at this point, I'm not really interested in teaching people what this is or like teaching people how to do it or any of that. I'm just going to do it. And people will potentially just organically engage with it and then maybe realize it over time. Or they won't realize it at all, but they'll still get, the basis out of it. And I think that's okay. If people who typically wouldn't know who, those women photographers that I showcased were, if people learn about them through my podcast, then follow them from there and then comment on their photos and like their stuff and, just kind of be part of their world now, I won. That was the whole point of doing this. So yeah, at this point, I'm just doing it. And I believe in what I'm doing. And yeah, it's less about proving anything to anybody. It's much just more about getting it done. So yeah, no, I'm glad you brought this up because it was a very clear and direct effort. And you might see things open up slightly in season 2, but I wanted season 1 to be very obvious that like we're doing something different here,
Yep.
And it might just be as obvious as you'll see a couple more white dudes on my podcast going forward, but you should still expect to see a lot of the same, a lot of women, a lot of people of color, and a lot of the other kind of diversity, which is less deep, I guess, is diversity of photography types.
Yeah.
I'm trying actually to focus less on portraiture, at least classic portraiture, things with like models and pose portraits and editorial, that kind of stuff. I want to double down on street photography because I've personally come to love street photography a lot recently in the last 6 months. And then I want to just really expand. I'm trying to get some astro people on here. A couple of large format people doing interesting different like old school types of photography. The holy grail, if one of y'all listening can help me out, I want to feature either a sports or a wildlife photographer that shoots on film. And it doesn't have to be exclusive, but I want somebody who has, an SLR with like a 500 millimeter lens on it, popping shots off Portra like in the wild somewhere in the safari. So let me know. Help me out, people.
I don't see anything like that. And that's why I'd be interested in listening to that. And I admire your approach to the whole thing. I think it is refreshing. And what I love about it is that, because there's still so many episodes I haven't listened to, but what I do see on there is a lot of new faces, whether it's, the actual photos and previews you posted on the Instagram page, or just when I scroll through the podcast feed, they're not the same names that I'm often seeing as much on other platforms. I know I mentioned some of the names that might be more recognizable, but there were plenty of new faces, new names on there. And I'm looking forward to listening to more of the podcast. So one of the last little things I wanted to talk about was, just your printing expertise. It never ceases to kind of, amaze me when I see you on YouTube in the bathroom, darkroom. You've got there printing color with what seems like such ease? Is it something that is actually, it takes you a long time to actually produce a good print, or you've gotten
Yeah,
that good
so
at it?
Uh, I've gotten good at producing, but printing is an extremely subjective thing, because you're talking either about the actual colors or you're talking about stylistic choices with black and white, for example. So I've gotten good at getting prints done in a shorter amount of time. That's the only thing I'll like officially grant myself. But yeah, I think for people kind of listening, thinking about doing this at home, it is very, very doable, no question about it. There's definitely gear that needs to be purchased, and there's certain elements of like infrastructure that might be very important. But as long as you have a space where you can do an enlargement in the dark, that is probably the hardest thing. And that just means literally a space. You don't need running water in the dark space. So yeah, I've been able to make the best of the situation that I have at home. But yeah, I think now I want to really kind of educate people a little bit more. Black and white, I'm not really interested in teaching people anything, just because I feel like that's already kind of accessible out there.
Hmm.
Color, I think, is the one where I would love to really push people. Given that so many people shoot color film, and people haven't been able to experience the joy of printing color film. And that one, honestly, is very easy to do in a very tight, small space. So actually, I've got some interesting stuff in the works right now. I was going to put out content on my own that I was gonna either sell or package somehow, but I've been able to field some sponsorships for this, because it is a big commitment actually for this type of content that I want to create. So I won't say more than that, but hopefully in the
Okay.
next month or two, you'll see something very pretty and like organized and like very well kind of documented, that really helps people start from scratch. I started from scratch. I've only been printing color, well, printing at all basically, since February of last year, right before the pandemic started.
Right.
And color itself, I hadn't printed at all until the pandemic started. The reason I dove in is because I had so much time, and I
Oh
was like,
wow.
well, I can isolate by printing. So
Yeah, yeah.
so
I
yeah,
would have
it
thought
hasn't
it
been
was
that long.
longer. Yeah, yeah.
No,
It
no,
seems
no.
seems like it is, and yeah, I love the cliffhanger, man. Just leaving us there on the edge.
No, yeah, I want to make sure to give back and help people. So
Yeah,
getting a sponsor is the way for me to put things out 100% for free at scale on YouTube. Money is not the motivator in basically any of this, but there's a lot of time that goes into this stuff. I mean, you do YouTube, you know exactly how much time
mm,
goes in, and especially for something where you're like designing a bit of a curriculum, I want it to make sense and I want it to like flow properly. So um, going to make sure to put in the proper time and like organize things well. And it's nice to be able to bring a brand on to not only market themselves but also help me put all this information out.
for sure. Sounds good. And I think you know coming from the viewpoint of starting out with wanting to help people, and
Hmm.
if other benefits come, then that's cool. But your main intention there is helping people learn, which is great. So what's next for the rest of 2021? We're halfway through now, and you've just launched
Hmm.
the brand. What can we expect from Ribsy for the rest of the year?
Yeah, yeah. I'm glad we're pretty close to wrapping up this initial sale, by the way. Hopefully you can't hear this horrible train that's going by, but
A little
um,
bit, a little bit.
we're pretty close to wrapping up all these sales. Actually, like stuff blew up. We sold a ton of film. I literally was just counting down the last remainder of rolls that I have in stock in London, and it's in the tens of rolls.
Wow.
So US, we still got a lot more. So if you're in the US, you could probably still find it directly from us. But anyways, so that's going to wrap up pretty soon, and that'll then let me focus again more on YouTube, just creating the usual stuff. There's so many things I want to do on YouTube. In the spirit of experimentation and just kind of messing around. That's always been my vibe. So that's always going to continue. We're not going to stop that. As I mentioned before, definitely thinking about what the next step is for New Classic in terms of what's the next product, the next thing we can get into. Podcast coming out, like I said, this week, end of this week, we'll have episode 1 ready to go. And then I personally just want to get out and do a bit more traveling. I know it's very selfish to want that, but it looks like things are going to be a bit possible, like basically very, very soon, given the vaccinations here in Europe. So I'm going to take advantage of that. And I want to do some hiking. I want to get out there and see some more sites. And of course, with that comes a lot of photography. A bunch of film stocks I want to try out, a bunch of cameras I want to make content about. And I just want to vlog a little bit. I usually don't vlog because it's kind of awkward, but I find that if I vlog about food, I personally don't get awkward, and I think people enjoy seeing the food I'm eating. So I'm going to make a real effort to incorporate that into my videos a bit more, especially the travel related stuff, because I don't know, I just feel like it adds an extra dimension. I'm a human being. I'm not just only about film photography. So yeah, the rest of the year, not too much going to change. I'm still going to be at it, busy, dropping 5-7 videos a month, getting after it with film photography. Yeah, nothing's really changing. Just more work, I guess.
Sounds good, man. Looking forward to it. So for anyone who doesn't know your channel or any of your other platforms, do you want to let them know where they can find you and your work, including the podcast?
Of course. So everything that's tied to me should now just be called Ribsy, Ribsy. You can find me on Instagram, YouTube by that. And then the podcast itself is on all the big platforms, Spotify, Google, whatever else is out there. But that's called the New Classic Film Photography Podcast. So if you type in most of that, it should pop up. And yeah, season 2 is coming out soon. So you'll see some fresh stuff on there. And then beyond that, obviously we have the New Classic Instagram account. It's at New Classic Film. And I'm definitely going to be doing a bunch of stuff on there content wise and engaging. A couple giveaways. I want to do some live streams. It's grown quite a bit in the last couple of days. So now that there's like a nice critical mass, I definitely want to take advantage of that and really talk to people directly. But yeah, those are the main things. I have a blog that I don't really tell anybody about, but it's linked on some of my videos where you can just see higher res, like actual images, as opposed to just Instagram and stuff like that. I love looking at stuff on an actual website. I recommend anybody, if you have your own work, put it on a website at the very least, so that you can look at it and other people can look at it in big.
For sure. Yeah. I mean, it's the next best thing, I guess, to a book. Anything's better than Instagram, really, when you're looking at tiny little images. But yeah, man, that sounds great. I'll put the links to all that stuff you mentioned in the description of this video for anyone who wants to check it out, including the Instagram pages, the podcast, and Ribsy's YouTube channel. But yeah, thanks heaps for chatting, man. And look forward to talking again soon.
Yeah, thank you so much for reaching out. It's always good to link up, and who knows, maybe I'll come to Australia one day.
That'll be great, man. One day, yeah, there'll be a spot on the couch for you if you ever want to come and crash.
Amazing, thank you.